these extraordinary times, our government is taking extraordinary measures. We do not want any Canadian to have to worry about whether or not they're going to be able to pay their rent, whether or not they're going to be able to buy groceries or care for their kids. We're helping companies keep people on the payroll so that workers are supported and the economy is positioned to recover from this. As young people, what you're going through matters. And we want to make sure that you'll be okay. No matter who you are or what you do, this is a time where you should be focused on your health and that of your neighbors. We will help Canadians financially.
Welcome to Ask and Answer, a live event brought to you by HuffPost Canada. I'm Althia Raj, HuffPost's Ottawa Bureau Chief. Well, we've heard lots from you since the beginning of the novel coronavirus pandemic. You've had questions about what federal government programs you can apply for, how long you can stay on them, and what happens if something doesn't fit neatly into your or your family's circumstances. So we've asked two cabinet ministers to come and give you some answers. Joining me from Ottawa is Carla Qualtrough, the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion. Her department is responsible for the Canada Emergency Response Benefit Program, the Serb, as we've come to call it. So far, more than 8 million Canadians have collected at least one of Serb's $2,000 monthly payments. Carla Qualtrough will answer your questions about help for individuals. Also in Ottawa is Mary Ng, the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. Mary Ng will answer questions about financial assistance for businesses. Thank you, Ministers, for joining us.
Well, good to Thank you for having us.
This program will run for about 30 minutes. We'll take some of your questions live. If you're watching on HuffPost.ca, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, please leave your questions in the comments, and our team will be feeding them to me. We're going to start, though, with some of the questions you sent us last week on our website.
Hi, my name's Christina Sims, and as you can see, I'm an African Canadian female and a senior citizen. I have underlying health conditions such as diabetes and hypertension, just to name a few. I work full-time at Goodwill Industries, which is considered a high-risk position because it's in a high-risk neighborhood, as well as some of our clientele are high risk. I would like to go back to work very much, as I enjoy my position very much. I want to delay the start of going back. If my employer calls me to come back, do I have to say yes right away? Would this affect my Serb benefits? And do you have any other resolutions that might be helpful to me and other Canadians in this position? I might also like to add that I do have to take public transportation. Thank you for answering my question.
Minister Qualtrough, is Christina Sims, who works in retail, obligated to return to work if she's concerned for her personal health?
Well, first and foremost, we want Christina to be safe and feel safe. And so I would advise her to talk to her employer to find out a way that they could come to a consensus about when it would be safest for her to go back to her job in light of her personal circumstances. If she's being advised perhaps by a doctor because of some of her medical circumstances not to go quite yet, then she absolutely would still be able to qualify for Serb. If they can find a way for her to do any of her work from home. I mean, the message clearly to everyone is we want people to work, but we want you to feel safe and we want you to be healthy in your work and as you work. So work with your employer, Christina, but know that if you're not able to work for reasons related to COVID, which include your own personal health, you definitely qualify for the Serb.
But do you need to make that decision with your doctor and with your employer, or can you just decide that I don't feel like I want to go to my job in retail?
Well, it's kind of obviously it's an attestation. So you have to attest to the fact that you're not working for COVID reasons, which include medical situations, circumstances that you've been maybe advised, or maybe even the public health agency has advised people, for example, who are immunocompromised not to go to work yet. It's really an individual circumstance. You have to attest to what you believe to be the truth in your circumstances. And there's no blanket rule for this. It's really about the individual. But again, we want employers to provide safe workplaces, and we want people like Christina to work when they feel safe.
Okay. Right now, Serb is available for up to 16 weeks, and Yvette Sabourin from Winnipeg wants to know if it's retroactive. I believe the answer is yes. You have until
The answer is yes.
October 3rd to apply. Many people also wrote in and wanted to know if Serb will be extended. And I think that's a good question, because last week the Prime Minister seemed to suggest that actually the program would be wound down as he encouraged employers to use the wage subsidy. So will Serb be extended?
Good question, and we're digging into that right now. So many people who started Serb on March 15th will end their 16 weeks around the beginning of July. So people are very curious to know after this last 4-week period what they'll be entitled to. And so we're looking at that. Obviously, we don't want to disincentivize work. We're no longer telling people to stay home. We're asking people to go back to work. The reality is, though, a lot of the jobs that existed in March don't exist anymore. So we're working through that right now. The interplay with the uptake on the wage subsidy is still playing out in real time for us. And we'll have more to say to Canadians about what comes next, but I can assure everyone we're really digging in to make sure people have support.
So if your employer is not using the wage subsidy, is there higher likelihood that you'd be able to stay on the Serb?
Well, I mean, absolutely. If you're not working, you can stay on the Serb. You only have your 16 weeks as of now. Remember, though, if you do have EI entitlement coming to you, whenever the Serb ends, you can go back to EI with your full entitlement in place. And so that covers a lot of our workers if they don't have a job to go back to. But as I said, we're going to find a way forward on this that really helps bring all these programs together meaningfully for Canadians and for businesses.
Well, as we know, many people are still, though, falling through the cracks, and they're wondering if help is on the way.
Hi, my name is Kay Anand from Burlington, Ontario. We opened a new boutique fitness studio in February 2020 and invested close to $700,000 in startup costs. Being a new business, we are excluded from CEBA, and we wanted to know when will more help be available for new businesses like ours.
Mary Ng, what should Kay Anand do?
Well, her business is one of so many across the country that we hear from, and we want to see them get support, and particularly the overhead operating cost support. We know that for business like hers, she's going to have non-deferrable expenses. So these are the fixed costs that she has. So whether it's rent or paying for salaries and so forth, she should be able to get access to the commercial rent assistance program. And we just expanded the eligibility for CEBA so that businesses who are newer and who wouldn't otherwise meet the criteria that we had for CEBA before, we're working on that now to make sure that that support is out there for businesses just like her business. And we're just going to keep working to make sure that businesses across the country are indeed getting the support that they need.
So she flagged that because she doesn't have any payroll in 2019, she actually still can't use CEBA, even if the threshold has been lowered.
The threshold has been lowered to $20,000. That was the first change. And then just almost 2 weeks ago now, we also expanded the criteria so that it would catch those employers or those businesses that don't have payroll, but that have non-deferrable expenses. And that will also catch newer businesses. I would suggest that in the meantime, what she can do is actually also get in touch with the Regional Development Agency. So for her, I think you said she's in Burlington. So that would be FedDev Ontario. And there's some support through FedDev Ontario that is catching a number of businesses who may not necessarily qualify for the business account loan or the commercial rent assistance. I think commercial rent she ought to be able to get it, just sort of just listening to her circumstances, it sounds like she probably would get that.
If the landlord has a mortgage.
No, the landlord doesn't need a mortgage. The landlord needs to own the property and apply through CMHC. Of course, applications opened last week. And as long as the landlord applies, the landlord will be eligible for the 50% forgivable loan, as long as the landlord provides the 75% discount of rent to the small business tenant. And we're encouraging all landlords to do that so that they can help our small businesses.
Okay, our next question is from Shelley Nothroat in St. Catharines, Ontario. She runs an insurance business, and she writes that she hasn't lost 30% of revenue to qualify for the wage subsidy, or 70% to qualify for the rent subsidy. but she's not making any income for herself, and she has to use her personal savings to cover wages and rent. She wants to know, when will commercial landlords be forced to help businesses that have lost any revenue? Mary Ng, I think that one's for you too.
Yeah. Well, the wage subsidy program, of course, is there to help those businesses that have seen a reduction in their revenue so that they can keep their employees on payroll, so that when it's safe to do so in recovery, they have a better recovery, they're better equipped to do so. But what she would be qualified for is helping her with her costs. We deferred GST, we deferred HST, we deferred customs duties probably won't apply to her, but just to give you an order of magnitude in terms of the deferred GST and HST payments, it helps 3.2 million businesses. It's equivalent to a $30 billion interest-free loan for a lot of those businesses. So helping her keep her costs low right now to manage through this period is what we're hearing from businesses, really, really helping right now.
Would you consider, I know Conservative leader Andrew Scheer has suggested that there may be a sliding scale to help ensure that some businesses have access to a rental subsidy. Is that something that you might be open to?
Well, we continue to look at a range of measures as we are approaching restarting the economy. I've certainly talked to businesses all across the country, and the support that they've indicated that they are drawing on right now, and perhaps some additional support that they may need as they restart. So just as Minister Qualtrough said about looking through the range of measures that we have to make sure that they continue to work, and that they work for our businesses in that restart, is exactly what we're looking at right now.
Okay, we also had a lot of emails from sole proprietors. Angus Bradley in North Vancouver and Jane Crawford in Kamloops wrote with questions wondering why they are excluded from the business loan program, that's CEBA. For example, they note that if you don't have a business bank account, but you use your personal checking account for your work expenses, you're excluded from CEBA. If you pay yourselves dividends, you also can't use CEBA. Are more changes coming to that program? And you did mention that you've made 2 tweaks already.
In fact, what you just described right now is, in fact, the expansion that we announced a couple of weeks ago, and we're just working with the financial institutions right now to make that available. The personal accounts eligibility, we are working actively to get that solution for those businesses that operate using a business account rather than a business working with a personal account, a checking rather than a commercial account, and those businesses that are sole proprietors, that are paying themselves through dividends, that don't qualify for the payroll, but who do have non-deferrable expenses that they have to pay. They're paying for rent, they're paying for insurance, they're paying salaries, for example. Those businesses absolutely now qualify for CEBA.
Yeah, someone wrote in from Toronto and was wondering why smaller businesses have to show that they have at least $40,000 in non-deferrable expenses, whereas larger businesses don't need to. And the argument that he was putting forward was that because there's $10,000 of that is basically a freebie if you pay back in 2 years, businesses that are healthier will be able to take advantage of this situation and get $10,000, whereas businesses that are struggling are kind of penalized through this program.
Well, the purpose of the CEBA account is to help businesses with their operating expenses. I mean, we heard from businesses that during this time when revenues are largely very significantly reduced, that what they need to do is they need some cash flow to help them pay the bills. So the loan is $40,000 of a loan, and we are saying, show us that you have non-deferrable expenses of $40,000 to $1.5 million, so that you are accessing this loan for its intended purpose, which is to help you pay for those bills during this difficult time.
If you're just joining us, I'm Althia Raj from HuffPost Canada, and I'm joined by Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion Minister Carla Qualtrough and Small Business Minister Mary Ng. We're answering your questions about COVID-19 federal assistance. Minister Qualtrough, our next question comes from a recent college graduate.
Hi, my name is Shayna Longlad. I'm from here in London, Ontario, and I graduated last November in 2019 from college after doing a 1-year program, and I saved up for taking that program after working for 10 years, and now I don't have any debt. I found a job in January. I was hired in January. I started working in February, but unfortunately I have been laid off from my job since March. I didn't make the minimum $5,000 last year because I was in school full-time. So I don't qualify for the Serb. I'm no longer a student, so I do not qualify for the CESB. And since I was a new employee, I can't get the CEWS either. So I feel like I have definitely fallen through the cracks, and I'm just wondering what help is there for me.
Well, Minister Qualtrough, what help is there for Sheena Longlad?
Well, first of all, I want to express to Sheena and others like her how complicated the personal circumstances of so many Canadians are in these tough times, and commend her for, saving up, going to school, incurring no debt, getting a job right away. That's phenomenal. And it must be extremely frustrating when you have a program for students that you have to have graduated since December and you graduated in November. You have a program where if you're laid off for COVID reasons, you have to have earned $5,000. And while she was laid off for COVID reasons, she hadn't earned the $5,000 because she was studying. Because she has no student debt, she can't take advantage of our Canada student loan payment deferrals and is really in a bit of the bind. My advice would be twofold. First of all, maybe look at the period in which you earned your income. I don't know what your income was in January, February, and March, but it isn't necessarily the 12 months of the calendar year last year where you could qualify for Serb. You could actually include January, February, and part of March in that 12 months. So maybe there's something there. And also I would dig in on the wage subsidy piece. And I don't know if Minister Ng can help us unpack that a little bit. But we have employers across the country who are actually bringing back temporary workers because they can get 75% of their salary covered. So I would maybe perhaps propose to your employer that you might have access to it might be in the benefit of the employer to have access. I don't know, Minister Ng, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, the wage subsidy certainly is available so that our employers can, in fact, help keep their keep their employees on payroll. And we're sort of seeing that in the restart. That's exactly what employers are doing, and we're encouraging employers to do that. So I agree with Minister Qualtrough. Perhaps talk to your employer and see if they can, in fact, utilize the wage subsidy for the payroll in helping bring you back.
Our next question comes from Kirsty in North Vancouver. She writes, I'm a single person with a disability receiving CPPD benefits. I'm not a senior and I do not have children. There have been no federal supports for someone like me, yet I face new challenges and expenses due to COVID-19. I no longer have access to the services I used pre-pandemic. I don't have internet at home, and I have new costs, grocery delivery, extra pharmacy dispensing fees, all while living on a limited disability income. Now, a number of people wrote to us with a version of this question. Will the federal government be offering a top-up to people with disabilities? Minister Qualtrough?
Thank you for the question. And it's a really important question. And as Minister for Disability Inclusion, we've really dug in with our Disability Advisory Group and others to get a sense of the disproportionate and very real impact that this pandemic is having on our citizens with disabilities. It's not just that things are costing more, it's that services that used to be provided through volunteers and through organizations aren't available anymore. And it's putting, even for some people, their actual independence at risk. And we're very worried. We are smack dab in the middle of National Accessibility Week, which is really exciting. I can't scoop my boss, the Prime Minister, so all I'll say, Althia, is wait till the end of the week, and Kirsty and many like her will be happy.
Okay, a mini scoop there. We have this question from Karen Smith from Facebook. Also a question actually that we got from Thomas Trombros in Kitchener, Ontario, Gail Orris from Red Deer, Alberta, Stuart Braun from the Yukon. They all note that the federal government promised a one-time tax repayment of $300 for people on old age security pensions and another $200 who get the guaranteed income supplement. They want to know when they will have the cash in hand.
I'm happy to answer that question. We recognize again that some of our citizens are disproportionately impacted, and those would include seniors, particularly as we watch what's playing out in our long-term care facilities across the country. Seniors are feeling vulnerable. That's why we offered the $300 payment to OAS recipients with an additional $200 top-up. Actually, I apologize. I think it's the reverse. That money is coming in the weeks to come. We're very excited. And again, I can't scoop a colleague, but I can assure you that the payment is coming soon.
All right. I think I had read somewhere before the end of the month, there would be a separate payment. Yes. Childcare is an issue that keeps coming up. Heather Van Ryn from Hamilton wrote asking, in Ontario, most day camp programs will be cancelled and daycares are still weeks away from opening, if they open at all. What is the plan for helping people, often women, who are not able to return to work because of not having any childcare?
Again, I'm happy to take this and then have Mary jump in.
Yep.
So we know that a key component to a strong economic recovery will be supporting childcare and making sure that women can go back to work, as they are currently bearing a disproportionate amount of the responsibility in childcare. One of the reasons we created Serb was so that we could put in place an income supplement, a support for women, for parents, but let's be honest, women who can't go to work or can't work right now because of childcare responsibilities. That's not changing. And to our conversation earlier, Althia, one of the groups of people that we have to look and take care of moving into the summer is women in particular who won't be able to go to work even if their jobs become available because of childcare, lacking of childcare options for them. So our government is absolutely looking to work with the provinces on childcare writ large. But in the meantime, it's a core group of people that the Serb is currently covering that we need to look to ensure that we support moving forward beyond even the 16 weeks.
So you did mention that an announcement was potentially coming. The government was looking at possibly extending Serb. Karen, no, I don't know if this is Karen Smith, but another Alicia Cello on YouTube asks when that decision on whether Serb will continue will be made.
I would say in the weeks to come. As I said, we're digging in. We're waiting to see the results of the third intake from Serb. Because remember, people have up until October 3rd to access their 16 weeks of Serb. So not everybody. In fact, we know that more than half of Serb recipients will still have Serb weeks available to them in July. So we have to look at the system and understand that some people will run out of Serb, some people won't run out of Serb, some people could switch to EI, some people don't have EI to switch to. Obviously, caregiving is not covered by EI, but sickness is. So these are all the factors that are at play right now as we look forward. And of course, we don't want to disincentivize work. So create systems and supports that encourage people to go back to work while at the same time supporting people who can't.
And
So
I want to jump in
yeah.
on the women issue. I have responsibility for the women's entrepreneurship file, and of course, just like Carla has talked about the disproportionate impact on women and women going back to work, we also have incredible female leaders who run their own companies and who also need the additional help and assistance through this particular period. So during COVID-19, we have added some additional support to the women's entrepreneurship ecosystem. We had implemented those and put those out across the country before COVID-19, and they just found themselves to be really busy. So if you're a new company and you are looking and getting access to the mentorship support or getting access to that additional capital to navigate for your new company, the women's entrepreneurship ecosystem is there across the country, just helping these incredible female-led businesses. But childcare is connected to that because, again, women are wearing all kinds of different hats right now, and we're helping them through this period. And having those additional supports is also going to be really important to ensure that they are going back, running their businesses and their enterprises, supported as we get into recovery.
Well, it's not just women who are taking care of their children. This next question also kind of touches upon childcare. It comes to us via video.
Hi, my name is Matthew West. I live in Claremont, Ontario, and here is my question. My wife is an assistant director of care at a long-term care home. I've been off work looking after our kids since March. The CRB only covers about a third of what I normally bring in, and this is affecting our family in a pretty big way. We are losing our savings quickly because I'm not bringing anything in. And I would go back to work tomorrow if I could, but there's no daycares open. And if there was a safe registered daycare to send our kids to, then I would be going back to work right away. I think the government should try to find a way for people like me to not lose what we've been building as a family for years because of this pandemic. My wife could go on the CRB and we would be better off because I would be bringing in more money than she does. But morally, neither of us are okay with that. Her home needs her, the residents need her, the staff need her, and she's an incredible force there. An interest-free loan for families is certainly something that the government could look at for people in, accentuating circumstances. And another thing is that they could be offering more generous CRB for people who, can get that.
Well, there were a couple of questions in there. Would the government consider an interest-free loan for individuals, something that has been offered to businesses? I'm not sure who wants to take that question, but an interest-free loan for people.
Yeah, I'll answer that. I mean, I think the message is nothing is off the table. It's not something that's currently under consideration, but, I really like Matthew's suggestion and I'm happy to take that back and dig in on it. What I will say is thank you to him and his family and to his wife for her contribution to this really important time in our history. And I know her children will look back and be very proud of what their mom contributed to this fight. The reality is that it's really hitting our families hard. The Serb is not replacing everybody's total income. That's a compromise that, in delivering it to 8 million people, we couldn't replace everybody's income. But certainly we'll take Matthew's suggestion back. The other piece on daycare is it's really important that, and I don't know the situation as well in Ontario, I'm from British Columbia, but many of our schools and daycares have stayed open for essential workers. And I don't know I apologize for not knowing, maybe Mary can contribute on the Ontario piece, but it's allowed a lot of our frontline workers in BC to have a place for their children to go during the day. So both parents as essential workers can work.
Yeah, it's not as open in Ontario. I mean, and so there is probably some support, but I do think that Matthew has a really good idea. And as Carla says, nothing is off the table. We are in just such unprecedented times. I know certainly for a lot of the programs that we have put out for businesses, it really is. They've come together because of the ideas that are coming directly from the Canadians to whom we serve. So every idea is a good idea, and we welcome them and we take it back and we dig in and we see whether or not we can make it work.
Okay, we're almost out of time. So just a reminder, we are taking your questions live. If you want to squeeze a few last questions in the comment feed below, we will try to get them answered by Minister Carla Qualtrough and Mary Ng. So just maybe perhaps brief questions here. Heather Rowe wants to know if someone was laid off before March 15th and their EI is expiring, can they apply for Serb even though they weren't directly laid off due to COVID, but they still can't find a job?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I love these short answers. And if you were on EI, I think you mentioned this before, you can apply for Serb now. And if you were on Serb and it expires, you can go on EI.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes to both.
Peter Thorpe in Ontario wonders, with the deficit and spending on emergency programs, will there be cuts or layoffs in the public service?
I'll answer that again. The reality is some of the jobs within the public service are very related to services we provide. So for example, when our parks are closed, the people who work in our national parks don't necessarily have work to do. This being said, we've tried to repurpose as many people as possible. We've tried to get people doing other jobs. I can tell you, for example, within ESDC, we don't have as big a demand for people to do passport applications because there isn't as many people
Nobody's
traveling.
going anywhere. Yeah.
But we have now redeployed all those people over to help us on the EI and Serb front. So we're trying desperately to not have to lay anybody off. And that hasn't been the case, but I can't guarantee that there aren't some jobs, obviously, that are different, that are very seasonal, that might be impacted.
Will there be tax hikes in the future to pay for all this spending?
Mary?
I think that, I think that what we've committed to Canadians, certainly, I mean, throughout this really extraordinary time, is to be very transparent with Canadians about what it is that we have put forward, the kinds of measures that are out there to support Canadians, and that's our commitment, is to continue to be transparent and open with Canadians so that they know what we are spending and for what purpose, and the kinds of emergency measures that are directed out to help Canadians through this very difficult period.
Pierre Legault from Surrey, British Columbia, wonders why foreigners were allowed to collect Serb, why foreign students, for example, are collecting federal assistance.
That's a really good question, and I'll say hi to Surrey. That's next to my riding of Delta. Really, for the Serb is income replacement. So if you are a resident in Canada and you were working in Canada and you lost your job for COVID reasons, you are eligible for the Serb. The student benefit, on the other hand, does not have a residency requirement, but you have to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. So different benefits with different policy objectives. For the income support for workers, you don't have to be a Canadian citizen. For the student benefit, you do. And that's in line with our broader student financial assistance policy writ large.
Are you confident that, I mean, we keep hearing about potential cases of fraud. I noticed that CRA has expanded the so-called snitch line to allow people to call in if they think their neighbors or businesses are using funds inappropriately. Are you confident that all the cases of fraud that we are likely experiencing will actually be chased down at the end of the day?
Well, I am confident that we haven't compromised our integrity measures. We moved a bunch of them to the back end of the process out of necessity to get money into the hands of Canadians. But between CRA and ESDC, I am very confident that people who receive payments that they shouldn't have, or people who made claims that they shouldn't have, will ultimately have to repay those monies. It's a complicated process. We have the data analytics to do it. But the compromise we made knowingly was to move our integrity measures to the back end, many of them. But we will find people and we will get the money back. Yes, I'm confident.
Okay, so that was from Pierre Legault in BC. Mary in Edmonton wrote to ask about a program, Minister Qualtrough, that you had discussed last week that actually I didn't even remember. She noted how the government had announced that it was going to set up a shorter home care training program for people who were unemployed so they could perform the lesser complicated tasks at care home. And she wants to know if this has been established and how and where she can find information about it.
Well, I guess, first of all, I'm excited that Mary was listening. Thank you very much. We know how important training is now as we go through this pandemic, and what an important role training will play as we recover economically. One of the ideas that we're currently exploring is to address the kind of short term, but of course there's a longer term, bigger conversation that our country needs to have about long-term care, to address the short-term needs within our existing long-term care facilities. To train personal support workers takes quite a long time, but we're exploring the idea of perhaps doing a shortened version of that training to get people into long-term care facilities as quickly as possible. No final decision's been made, but I can tell you that's another really good idea that we're looking into.
All right. Greg Sibley on Twitter wants to know why graduates, I guess university graduates from fall 2019 who were looking for their first job when COVID happened were excluded from the CESB. Why does it only apply to people who graduate after December 2019?
It's a good question, and one of the toughest choices we've had to make in all these benefits are the cutoffs. So how much money can somebody earn? What's the deadline? How much do you have to have earned? How long ago do you have to have graduated in order to qualify for a student benefit? We looked, based on the information we had, talking with student organizations, we felt that if you've graduated since December, you still have close enough proximity to your student life, and your job prospects are probably significantly impacted because of the pandemic. And we chose December. I recognize we could have chose January, we could have chosen November, but like in all these deadlines and all these very quickly deliverable benefits, we have to draw lines in the sand and then do the best we can to work with people on either side of them.
All right. Well, I know we're almost out of time, so I want to wrap up some of the things that we learned. Basically, a decision on whether CRB will be extended will be made in a couple of weeks. An announcement for people on disability will be made by the end of the week, and you should get your OAS and JAS benefit. You should qualify for those before the end of the month. Is that right? Did I miss anything?
I think you've got it.
All right. Okay. Well, I know that there are still dozens of additional questions that are coming in, and I know there were many more questions that we didn't get to that were submitted. So perhaps we will have you back on another time. I want to thank Carla Qualtrough and Mary Ng for their time. Thank you very much, ministers.
Well, thank you
so
for
much.
your thoughtful questions. Really good questions.
And thank you very much for watching and writing in. Check HuffPost.ca for the latest updates, and be sure to subscribe to our daily politics newsletter. We'd also love to know what topics you'd like to hear about in our next Ask and Answer. Let us know right here in the comments below. Until then, I'm Althia Raj. Goodbye. Stay safe. Thanks for listening.